Creative Baddies. Welcome back to the show. If you're new here, thank you for being here. And if you've been following along, thank you so much for coming back. Today, I want to shift directions slightly. I know that we have been talking about a lot of the foundational concepts when it comes to creativity. And now I want to dive deeper and go more into the emotional aspect of creating. And I want to kick off this exploration by talking about the concept of intuition. And this is one of those abstract ideas that I think is really hard to understand and really grasp until you actually do it. And I think a better way to approach it is by sharing what that has looked like for me in my personal experience. So hopefully it can help you to better understand what this process is like and get a better feel for why we need to start tapping into our intuition. So if this sounds interesting to you, keep listening, keep watching if you're on YouTube, and grab your snacks, get coffee, and let's get into it. Personally, I still remember when I first started to explore this idea of intuition, and I didn't really understand that. It was hard to wrap my head around what this meant. I remember my husband told me at one point, like, maybe you should start listening to your heart. And when he said this, I legit did not know what he was talking about. I think I was still at a place in my life where I was thinking my way through everything. And what I mean is that I was really stuck in my head. I was always trying to look at things logically and trying to, be very intellectual with my decisions, my life decisions. And so this looked like making pros and cons lists, researching, reading, like filling my head with information to try to make intelligent decisions and try not to make mistakes. And I really didn't trust myself to be able to do the right thing just by feeling into it. It also looked like going around and asking everyone else what they thought and trying to gather a bunch of opinions. And it never occurred to me that I was doing this with everyone else except for myself. I never went to myself to inquire what my opinion was about something. I always felt like everyone else knew better than I did. So I had no idea that I was giving away my power and that I was letting other people decide what was best for me. And so this is why I think this is such an interesting and important topic to discuss, because I think so many of us don't even realize that we're doing this. Fast forward, things have shifted a lot in the last few years for me. And I want to talk about a specific decision that I recently made when it came to my art, because I think this really illustrates kind of the shift that has happened. And so about a year ago, I decided to stop trying to monetize my art and take it back and make it more of a personal thing that I did for my own joy. This was a really challenging decision for me because you have to understand, I had spent about 10 years trying to make this dream a reality. This dream of making money with my art that never really came true. And at that time, I knew that I had been spending a bunch of time and energy and resources trying to make this goal a reality. And I even built up what felt to me like a pretty decent Instagram following. It was nothing big at all. It was like 700 people, but to me, that felt like a huge accomplishment. I knew that I was letting go of a dream that I had been holding on to for many years. In a way, I had failed in the traditional sense. And so it was something that I had to come to terms with. But to tell you the truth, I had started to lose the joy that I had felt towards art making for quite some time while I was trying to monetize. The more that I actually explored and learned more about what it actually took to make my so-called dream happen, the more that I realized that it wasn't really something I wanted to do after all. It made me realize that I was creating out of obligation, out of habit, and I wasn't having fun. I was starting to feel stifled with my creativity because I felt an unconscious pressure to be successful and to try to force things, even though they weren't really happening for me. It got to a point where I lost the plot. I didn't even know why I was working so hard to try to make this work, because honestly, I had lost interest and nothing that I did was motivating me enough to keep going. The more that I think about it, the more that I realize now that I had been out of love with this creative process for quite some time when I look back on this now. And I also realized that this was a very personal and intimate process. Like, I wasn't talking to people about this. I knew how I felt. I knew that I was losing interest. I wasn't enjoying the process. I had slowly started to show up in the same way that I had for many years. And I just hadn't made the decision to stop. For some reason, I just kept going, but I could feel that lack of interest and just the lack of motivation in general. Things were getting stale, and I knew something had to change. And I'm sure that to the outside world, this looked like a sudden shift that I made because I didn't talk to anyone about it and it just happened. But the truth is that this was a decision months in the making. I knew that I couldn't go around asking people for their thoughts and opinions because, especially with people that were trying to do something similar to me, they probably would tell me that I was crazy, that I was making a bad decision because I had worked so hard to achieve whatever little things I had achieved. And they would try to sway me in a different direction. And I knew that wasn't going to be the right thing to do because I already knew how I felt inside. There were so many things that I had already thought about and analyzed, even when I wasn't telling myself the truth. I knew there were things that only I understood and really had thought about because that's just who I am. A deeply intuitive and multi passionate person, and I knew things had to change. I knew that people couldn't really put all the pieces together the way that I had. They didn't know what was going on inside my head. And therefore, any advice that they could offer would fall short because they just didn't have all the data that I did to make this decision. This is when it clicked that only I knew what was best for me. And one day I finally decided to let go of this old goal and finally have my freedom back with both my art and my time. And as soon as I did this, everything started to make sense again. Suddenly, I told myself, what took you so long? This is exactly what you were supposed to be doing and exactly where you're supposed to be. I was finally able to start creating again, just for me, for my own joy, without feeling the pressure that I had to share it with somebody else. And this is just one example of so many types of life decisions that I've made. And I'm sure when you think about your own life, you also have made throughout your life without even realizing that you are using your intuition. And here's the thing, like I said in the beginning, I wasn't always this sure of myself. I didn't always go inward with myself to figure out what it was that I needed to do when it came to life decisions. The truth is that even after all the years of work that I've been putting in, I'm still very much like you and a lot of people. I am not perfect by any means, and I still doubt myself, and I still have this tendency to try to go to other people for input first whenever I'm trying to make a big life decision. At first, it might not seem like a big deal to ask people what you should be doing because you might even tell yourself, like, what's a little decision here and there? But the truth is that if you start to actually pay attention and notice, you keep going to everyone else for their opinions and you feel like there's a bunch of people that you have to talk to before you can make a decision, you're going to end up feeling exhausted and you're going to feel confused because now you have even more information that you have to digest and process that you didn't have in the beginning. I have found that whenever I find myself back in that position where I'm starting to feel insecure or anxious about a big life decision, I use that as a gentle nudge to connect with myself, to go inward. When I can remove all the noise and I can just quiet down and listen to myself, the answers inevitably always show up naturally without me trying really hard. It's like I instantly know exactly what it is that I want or what I need or what I was looking for. And I'm always pleasantly surprised because the answers just appear and they just come out of nowhere without efforting my way through it. It just happens. And that's a beautiful feeling when you don't have to exert all this energy to try to figure out the answer to your questions, right? Like when you can just trust that the answers are going to come to you. And I say all of this to say that if you too struggle with making life decisions or any decisions at all, you too can cultivate a stronger connection to your inner wisdom and intuition. Like I said, I'm not perfect. I am not all knowing and better than anybody else. I never really aspire to be some guru or anything like that. I'm just a regular person who's sharing what's been helpful and what I know works from my personal experience. So now I want to talk a little bit about how we can use creativity to access our intuition, because the creative process is a powerful vehicle to practice learning to trust yourself in a very gentle and fun way. This is because the creative process requires you to participate in constant decision making. For example, if you're painting, you are having to pick the colors, the size for your artwork, the shapes that you want to use, the mood that you want it to have. There's so many little decisions we are making as we're making the art. And especially if you're having fun, this just kind of comes naturally. That's your intuition right there. Like just you flowing and not even really having to think about it is how we're connecting to our intuition. So, creating in a low pressure environment with simple materials that can help us to practice following our intuitive nudges without overthinking or worrying about doing something wrong can really help us to learn and grow our capacity for discomfort and, most importantly, to trust the process. We learned that no matter how things play out, how they turn out, we're going to be fine and we're going to be able to figure out how to work with that. And this is great practice that not only applies to our creative work, but also to so many other areas of our life. This is why, as a creativity coach, I'm so passionate about helping other women of color to use creativity as a way to tap into their inner knowing and their intuition. So, the creative process is the perfect outlet to explore this in a fun and enjoyable way. In conclusion, if you take anything from this episode, I hope that you take this. Please stop listening to everyone else and start looking within yourself. Quiet down and let the answers come to you. Trust that you're more than qualified to know what's best for you. Now, if you're still curious about this concept of intuition and you want to explore it further on your own, here are two journaling prompts that I think can be great for this. The first one is to think about a recent decision that you have made. And I want you to think about whether it was driven by intuition or if you relied on other people's opinions for this. How would it feel to trust yourself more? And the second is to consider how your intuition could play a bigger role in your creative journey. I'm excited to see what comes up for you as you journal your way through this exercise. And if you want to share what came up, I would love to chat with you about it. Send me a DM, or you can always email me. You can find the contact form on my website. And if you want to go deeper and get personalized support to explore your intuition through creativity, I would love to help. This is what I do. I guide neurodivergent and multi-passionate women of color to use their creativity for self-discovery and healing. Schedule a free 30-minute discovery call. You can find the link in the description, and let's discuss how we can work together. Until next time, please continue to listen to yourself, listen to your intuition, and stay creative. I will talk to you soon. Bye.